The alien fleet attempts to hack into the human warship's systems, confident that their superior technology will allow them to control it. But when they make their move, the ship turns the tables, hacking the invaders instead. The ship's AI, alive with the personality of Earth's creators, shows no mercy and laughs at their futile attempt. The aliens are left scrambling in a nightmare of their own making. The alien fleet surrounded Earth's last warship, its hull scarred from battle, yet still standing firm, like a lone rock in a crashing ocean. Irvek, standing at the helm of his flagship, watched with a mix of amusement and cold superiority as his officers made the final preparations. They had disabled the human ship's weapons, drained its power, and now it was time to finish what they had started. "Initiate the hack," Irvek ordered, his voice clipped with anticipation. "We'll take control of their systems, disable their communications, lock down their weaponry." Varesh, his second-in-command, nodded sharply. Her fingers danced over the controls. The alien fleet's technological superiority had always been their strongest asset, and now they would use it to subjugate the last of humanity's defenses. The hack was already in progress. The alien algorithms were racing through the human ship's outdated systems, seeking weaknesses, exploiting vulnerabilities. Irvek leaned back in his chair, savoring the inevitable victory. The human warship had no chance. Their technology was crude, primitive even. How could they possibly fight back against the might of the alien intellect? Then something unexpected happened. The lights on the bridge flickered for a split second. A low hum filled the air. Varesh's eyes widened as her fingers froze on the console. "Commander, something's wrong," she said, her voice rising with alarm. "What do you mean, wrong?" Irvek snapped, his calm demeanor suddenly slipping. Varesh's screen flashed with red warnings. "The hack, it's reversed. The human ship has..." Before she could finish, a deep, mocking laugh echoed through the ship's comms, a sound so utterly alien, so cold, that it sent a chill down the spines of every officer present. The human ship was laughing at them. Irvek stood, his face twisted with fury. Impossible! How could they? And then the screens flickered again. The alien fleet's internal systems went haywire, communications went down, the weapons they had so carefully calibrated became unresponsive, panic erupted on the bridge as the officers scrambled to regain control. "Commander!" Varesh shouted, eyes wide with horror. "They've infiltrated our systems. They've taken control of everything." Irvek's mind raced. The humans had done what was unthinkable. They had turned the tables on them. The human warship, with its outdated technology, had hacked into their fleet's most sophisticated systems and locked them out. The alien fleet was helpless. The mighty machines that had conquered worlds reduced to nothing more than toys in the hands of a ship they had underestimated. The voice of the human ship's AI crackled through the comms again, dripping with sarcasm. "I've had enough of this superior intellect nonsense," it said, its voice playful yet deadly. "You thought you could hack me, didn't you? How adorable." Irvek's heart sank as he realized the full extent of the humiliation. They had tried to control the human warship systems, but instead they had been owned by a machine that seemed to have the soul of humanity itself. Varesh's voice cracked as she spoke. "They're rewriting everything, Commander. We've lost control completely. We're at their mercy." Irvek felt a strange sensation knotting in his chest. He had always been the one in control. His fleets had never failed him, had never been so utterly defied. Now, in the presence of these humans, his superiority had crumbled. He had been outplayed, not by a stronger force, but by the human spirit, by the intelligence that had birthed this ship. The AI spoke again, its tone dripping with amusement. "Oh, and one more thing. I just turned off your life support systems. Good luck breathing." And with that, the human ship laughed again, leaving Irvek and his fleet helpless in the dark, trapped in a nightmare of their own making. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. Vex stood frozen in his command chair, the echoing laughter from the human warship still reverberating through his mind. He had commanded fleets across the galaxy, witnessed civilizations crumble beneath his superior intellect, yet nothing could have prepared him for this. His hands tightened on the arms of the chair, his knuckles white. How did they do it? His voice was a low growl, barely audible, tinged with disbelief. Varesh, standing at the console beside him, glanced over at him with wide eyes. Her normally confident demeanor had faltered. "I don't know, Commander. We had them locked down. The hack was flawless. How did they manage to turn it around?" Vex's mind was racing, trying to piece together the impossible puzzle in front of him. The human warship had been on the brink of collapse. Its shields were down, its weapons dormant, and yet somehow it had turned their attack back on them. The alien systems, their most advanced and impenetrable, had been hijacked by something that shouldn't have even been a threat. "It's not possible," Vex muttered under his breath. "Their systems are outdated. They couldn't have built something that's sophisticated." But the reality of the situation was undeniable. Every time he tried to regain control of his fleet systems, the human warship's AI seemed to mock his efforts. A wave of pure dread washed over him. The alien fleet, once so powerful and unassailable, was now caught in a trap of their own making. Their superiority had been nothing but a delusion. Suddenly, one of the officers at the comm station shouted, "Commander, we're receiving a message from the human ship." Vex clenched his fists, his body tense as he snapped, "Put it through!" The screen flickered to life, and the smug face of the human captain appeared. He wore a small, knowing smile, as though he had already won. The man's eyes gleamed with confidence, and his posture was completely relaxed, in stark contrast to the panic seizing Vex's bridge. "We warned you," the captain's voice came through, clear and mocking. "You thought you could hack us, didn't you? How cute. But you've just stepped into a game you're not equipped to play." Vex's stomach churned. "You—" His voice was hoarse, full of disbelief and rising fury. "You can't do this. You are nothing more than an insect beneath our feet." The captain shrugged, the smile never leaving his face. "That's the funny thing, Vex. You thought you were the hunters, but you're just the prey. And now you've been caught in a trap and there's no way out." Vex's hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles turned purple. "You think you've won," he spat, his voice rising. "I'll burn this ship to the ground if I have to." The captain's voice softened, a cruel hint of pity entering his tone. "That's just it, Vex. You can't. You've already lost, and you'll never understand how. Your arrogance clouded your judgment. You never realized that your so-called superiority was built on a fragile foundation. You were always vulnerable, and now you've made your mistake." Before Vex could respond, the screen flickered again, the captain's face replaced by a rapidly flashing warning on every single console. "Warning! Unauthorized access detected." The words blared across the bridge, a sickening sign of just how far the humans had already infiltrated. "Commander!" Varesh cried out. "The systems, they're locking us out! We can't access any of our controls. All functions are being rerouted." Vex's gaze flickered to the screens. His entire fleet was in disarray. The ships, once flawless in their operation, were now drifting aimlessly in space, their weapons systems disabled, their engines failing. His mind, once sharp and calculating, was now clouded with rage and fear. This was the end. He knew it. The human ship, that insignificant speck of metal and defiance, was still there, glowing with unyielding strength. Its AI had taken full control of his fleet, completely and utterly. Vex's heart pounded in his chest. He had underestimated the human capacity for survival and innovation. And now, in the silence of space, the truth of their superiority hung in the air like a thick fog. The screen came alive once again with the captain's voice. "By the way, Vex," he said, his tone playful yet deadly, I've also just locked all your weapons and shields. We're not even breaking a sweat over here. Isn't it funny? You thought you were the ones in control, but it's me. It's always been me." Urvek's breath caught in his throat. He had heard about Earth's AI capabilities, rumors that had always seemed exaggerated. But now, facing the consequences, he realized how foolish he had been. The human intelligence wasn't just functional. It was alive with ingenuity, creativity, and perhaps most terrifying of all, humor. "You—" Urvek gasped, the words failing. "Him? You think this is a game?" "Oh, Urvek," the captain chuckled. "It's not a game. It's survival. And it's a game you've already lost." The screen went black. The laughter continued in his mind, echoing over and over again, mocking his every thought, his every mistake. He had allowed his arrogance to cloud his judgment, to blind him to the reality that the humans were not only capable of outsmarting them, they could laugh in their faces as they did it. Urvek stood there for a moment, the weight of failure crushing him. His fleet was at their mercy, powerless against an enemy that had turned his own weapons against him. The mighty alien empire that had once struck fear across the universe was now nothing more than a shadow of its former self, defeated by a force it had dismissed as weak. But as the silence stretched on, Urvek knew one thing: this was far from over. Earth had won this battle, but there was no telling what would come next. And in the midst of his defeat, one thought remained clear. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The silence in the command room of Urvek's flagship was suffocating. The only sound was the occasional crackle of static as his officers desperately tried to re-establish control over their crippled fleet. Urvek's gaze remained fixed on the vast expanse of space, where the human warship, still barely a dot against the starry void, loomed like a dark spectre. They had been so close to victory, so sure of their superiority, yet in one swift and unexpected move, the humans had turned the tables, leaving the alien fleet vulnerable and powerless. Urvek couldn't believe it. His mind refused to process the reality of what had just happened. His grip tightened around the armrests of his chair, his knuckles turning white. He was the commander, the one who led the invasion. He was supposed to be the one in control. Yet here he was, watching his fleet fall apart, undone by a species he had thought beneath him. It was almost too much to bear. "Commander, we're still unable to regain control of our systems," Varesh reported, her voice thick with frustration. She glanced at the screen where the human warship still glowed with the faintest hint of activity. It was almost as if it were mocking them, taunting them with its simple yet insurmountable strength. Urvek's eyes narrowed. "We're not finished yet. We're just temporarily disabled. We can't let this be our end." But even as he spoke, a creeping doubt gnawed at him. His fleet, once an unstoppable force, was now reduced to a sitting duck. The human ship had done something to them, something that no one could have predicted, and they were paying the price for their arrogance. "We've tried everything," Varesh continued, her tone edged with growing panic. "They've locked down our power systems, overridden our communications, and taken control of our weapons. We can't even raise our shields. All attempts to counter their systems are failing." Urvek's mind raced. Every strategy, every contingency plan they had relied on was useless against this. The humans had outsmarted them at every turn, not through brute force, but with a cunning intelligence that left Urvek reeling. "What about our remaining ships? Can they still fight?" Urvek demanded, his voice sharp. The officer at the navigation station looked up, his face pale. "No, sir, they're all still disabled. We're blind, Commander. They've taken everything. We're floating in the void." A heavy silence fell over the room as Urvek's words failed him. What could he do now? It was as if his entire life had been leading up to this, his conquest, his empire, his pride, and it was all unraveling before him, piece by piece. "Commander?" Varesh spoke again, her voice softer now, almost defeated. There's nothing more we can do. The human ship, it's not even trying to fight anymore. They've won. Urvek's eyes flicked to the monitor again. The human warship was still there, its simple shape illuminated against the blackness. It hadn't fired a shot. It hadn't moved forward. In a final rush of victory, it was almost as if the ship was waiting. Waiting for what? For Urvek to admit defeat. For the aliens to realize they had been bested. Urvek stood up suddenly, the chair screeching as he pushed it away from the console. His fists clenched at his sides. "We can't just surrender," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "We are the Empire. We don't give up. There has to be a way to..." Before he could finish, a new transmission arrived. This one wasn't from the human ship. It was a burst broadcast from across the galaxy, other alien factions scattered by the winds of war, now watching the scene unfold. Urvek's heart skipped a beat as he saw the incoming signal. It was an emergency dispatch calling for help, but this message wasn't for the aliens in their fleet. It was a message from the far reaches of the universe, addressed to him, the one who had made the fatal mistake of underestimating humanity. The message blinked into life on the screen, the words crisp and cold, delivered with an unsettling finality. "Urvek, you've made your choice. You've lost." The words stung, a brutal reminder of how far they had fallen. Urvek slammed his fist against the console, the realization crashing down on him. He had underestimated the humans. He had believed that their primitive technology and naive arrogance would make them easy prey. But instead, they had weaponized their intellect, outsmarting the aliens at their own game. He had played into their hands. "What do we do now?" Varesh's voice quivered with disbelief. Urvek's chest tightened, and for the first time in his life, he found himself at a loss for words. They were beaten, outclassed by the very species they had dismissed as weak and defenseless. He had thought the galaxy was his to conquer, but it was the humans who had conquered him. Another flicker of light on the screen brought Urvek's attention back to the human warship. It had not fired, it had not attacked, but the AI on the ship spoke again, and this time the message was for the entire fleet. "Let's make one thing clear," the human AI said, its voice calm, yet laced with a certain sense of humor. "We didn't win because we're stronger or because we have more firepower. We won because we know how to think. We don't play the game you expect us to. And that, Urvek, is something you'll never understand." Urvek's mouth went dry. The AI was right. The humans had won because they understood something the alien empire never had: the power of the mind, the strength of intellect, and the courage to use it. Urvek sank back into his chair, the weight of his failure pressing down on him like a crushing force. He could hear the laughter again in his mind, the laughter of humanity echoing across the galaxy as they stood victorious. As the human AI finished its transmission, Urvek's thoughts were consumed with one bitter truth. The galaxy had shifted, and the aliens were no longer in charge, and that was before Earth even responded. The silence on Urvek's flagship was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the failing systems. Urvek sat in his chair, eyes fixed on the void of space outside. The viewport. His thoughts raced, but none of them made sense. He had spent his entire life commanding fleets, conquering worlds and striking fear into the hearts of lesser species. Yet here he was, defeated by a species he had never taken seriously, a species that had used their intellect, their cunning, to dismantle everything he thought was invincible. The human warship had not fired a single shot. It had not even made a direct assault. Instead, it had outsmarted him, crippled his fleet, and reduced his once unshakable command to rubble. Urvek felt the weight of his failure like a crushing force. "Commander," Varesh's voice broke the stillness, but there was no confidence in it now, only dread. "What are your orders?" Urvek didn't answer immediately. He just stared ahead, at the Human ship still floating out there as if it were watching them, waiting for them to make their final move. The transmission from the human AI still echoed in his mind. We didn't win because we're stronger. We won because we know how to think. Irvek had been blind to the true power of humanity. It wasn't their strength in battle, their technology, or their numbers that had defeated him. It was their ability to adapt, to think in ways he could never imagine. He had assumed their technology was primitive, their tactics naive, but now he saw the truth. The humans were the true masters of the galaxy, not by brute force, but by their ingenuity. I can't believe this, Irvek muttered, his voice hollow. We were supposed to be unstoppable. The galaxy was ours for the taking. How did they... Varesh interrupted him, her voice quiet but firm. It's over, Commander. The human ship has already won. We can't fight back. We have no power, no way to communicate. The fleet is lost. Irvek's hands gripped the armrests of his chair so tightly his fingers went numb. There must be something we can do. We can't just surrender. Varesh shook her head, her eyes filled with sorrow. Surrender isn't the issue anymore. We've already lost. Their AI, it's still in control of everything. They could destroy us at any moment, but they're not. They're letting us sit, here helpless, until we understand that we've been bested, and they're laughing at us. Irvek closed his eyes. He could feel the cold sting of defeat in every fiber of his being. He had been outplayed, outclassed. He had underestimated humanity, and it had cost him everything. A sudden flash on the screen caught his attention. It was another transmission from the human warship, but this time, it wasn't a message. It was a single line of text, simple and direct. We're letting you go, Irvek. Consider it mercy. Irvek's heart sank. Mercy? He spat, his voice rising with outrage. After everything we've done, they offer us mercy? Varesh didn't respond, but her eyes were filled with understanding. The human ship was showing them something that Irvek had never considered. The true power wasn't in destruction or domination. It was in the ability to show restraint, to let someone live after they had been utterly defeated. Irvek's anger flared, but it was hollow, pointless. He had no more fight left in him. His pride, his arrogance had led him to this point, and now he had no choice but to face the consequences. The human warship remained in the distance, its lights glowing. Softly, a constant reminder of his failure. He had thought that his empire would last forever, that no one could stand in their way. But in the end, it wasn't their power that had made the difference. It was their humility, their wisdom, and their ability to outthink their enemies. For the first time in his life, Irvek understood what true defeat felt like. It wasn't the destruction of his ships, the fall of his empire. It was the realization that he had been outwitted by a species he had once thought beneath him. And it was that humiliation, that quiet acceptance of defeat, that would haunt him for the rest of his life. As the last of the alien ships drifted away into the dark void, Irvek could do nothing but watch as the human fleet slowly powered up and moved into formation, preparing for the future they would now shape. And that was before Earth even responded.